Welcome back to the Kingsway Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We have major plans for today.
Yeah, for sure.
Big plans. We were sitting here just getting ready to start, and we're like, yo, we're going to do an off the cuff. And I'm like, it's going to be really off the cuff.
Really off the cuff. Listen.
Yeah. Bring it. Bring it.
We don't have questions.
We need comments.
We need comments.
We need those comments.
We need them.
And I feel like people are worried that they're going to get judged because it's on the internet.
Yeah.
All right. I totally understand that. That's not going to happen.
Do you understand the level of research that we put into this?
Very little.
It's nil.
Nil. we need your questions because we want to interact with you. We've been excited. I think we've now surpassed. I think we've gained 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
And so that's amazing. And so we just want to know those that are listening. Like, make a comment. And if you're watching on Spotify or something else, I think it'd be easy thing to pop over to our YouTube, and just comment on the video, comment on the podcast that you listen to. Just drop it in there. Also, we'd love to know if you're listening to us on another platform. You know, I know that I listen to Podcast Addict. That's kind of the thing that I listen to, and that's on Droid. Whatever you're choosing to listen to. We'd love to know it. Like I said, this is an off the cuff. It's gonna be off the cuff.
It's gonna be really off the cuff.
But we do this every now and then, and really what it's trying to do is just give us some moments to talk about some things that are kind of on our minds, silly, fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes some Bible verses and some things that have a little bit more meat to them. I mentioned this in the last podcast. I'm just gonna start off with it because you haven't seen it yet. And I know you haven't because we just talked about it.
Yeah, we literally just finished
talking about it. But I'm like, I want people to watch it. You haven't seen The Chosen by VidAngel yet. Okay.
And the only reason at this point, because you've talked about it enough, that I'm like, all right, I'd give it a shot.
I know. I'm like sometimes like fire in the pan. You're like, I still like it next week.
Exactly. Yeah. But just like, I mean, you said it on the last one, but just like you, I'm extremely skeptical of anything Christian. So when I saw that coming out, dismissed out of hand, right?
1,000%.
Yeah.
In fact, it recommended me like 4 times before I was like,
yeah,
fine.
Yeah, for sure. So, but the only reason I haven't,
which is crazy because you grew up on VeggieTales, right?
Yeah,
and
that's different.
But
though.
like I grew up on VeggieTales
kid, you know?
and like Adventures in Odyssey, and what was the other one? Mac and Me? No.
I know exactly. McGee and me.
All right, Christian TV had a place. We were both homeschooled for a little while.
Yeah,
it had. You weren't. You were homeschooled for a long time.
I was homeschooled all the time.
Stacey, we love you. Hey, it takes a heroic woman to be able to do that.
She's still doing it,
and with you.
Yeah. See, I always thought it was perfect.
Oh,
That's in the comments. My mom said.
Put it in the comments.
That's what my mom told me.
No, but I always found it weird, like how that didn't transfer.
Yeah.
To like,
you know what I think it is? I think we grow up and it feels like maybe the Christian like media didn't.
Yep.
Like it has the same level of like conviction and like content.
It feels like it feels like a 90s sitcom every time I watched a Christian movie.
Yeah. But like even like the content of it, like, maybe it's not animated veggies anymore, but it still feels like that same type of thing. Even if it's like, I hate to call specific people out, but like Courageous or like Fireproof, it's like maybe this thing it's a little more intense, but it's still the same thing.
No,
in my
and
mind.
like I struggle with it because I watch movies that have a lot more drama to them, and I wish.
Exactly.
I could see, but again, that could be my bias.
Yeah.
As much as anything. But when I watch it, I don't stay entertained.
Yeah.
I like the content. I don't like the entertainment value.
Mm-hmm.
And so I struggle. Maybe that's just a sin in me.
Yeah.
But but I will tell you, The Chosen, I watched the first episode. I got drawn in by a trailer, which never happens to me. Trailers sometimes like 50% of the time, trailers ruin the movie for me because they tell too much.
Yeah.
And they bump the expectations up so high that when you watch it, you're like, it wasn't. And it was the exact opposite. It was just like a subtle scene. And it was the Call of Matthew, which I think, have you seen that scene yet?
No, I've literally seen nothing.
And it was just honestly, it was the intensity of the person they chose to pick Jesus. And the way he just, I mean, I can't even describe it. It's like if you met somebody that had this happy-go-lucky, but then the authority of God behind him. Like he is kind, he's gentle. He has these eyes that are joyful and excited, but then there's these authoritative moments that you're like, oh wow. And it is just this brilliance, and it's subtle. They don't explain everything. They don't try to talk you. I mean, it is just, they let you as the person watching enjoy it. And I have found myself, especially coming from Ozark Christian College and knowing a little bit more, I watch these and I see all the little like Easter eggs that they just drop in there, and I'm like, oh, that was cool. I know no one noticed that. You know, like little name drops or little things they do and they don't, and you're like, you know, because the most Christian movies, they'll be like, they're like, this is James, son of Zebedee. Oh, hi, Dad Zebedee. Like, you know, like, and no, they'll be like, Jesus will be like, hey, Zebedee, how are you? Have you seen my boys? That's it. And it's, if you don't know his boys are James and John, you don't know that that's their dad. You're going, which one's their boys? You know, like, you don't know. And so I just love the way that they allow you to be an intelligent viewer. And then if you dive into it, it's fun. Jesus is the best part. That's why it's good.
That's just like the Sunday school answer.
Yeah,
right?
Facts, dude. But it is so good, man. Like I told you in the last episode, like, I cried multiple times because of the way, and I think the last time I felt like that with Jesus was the Passion of the Christ. It legitimately was the last time that I looked at like a person depicting Christ and went, wow, that's probably pretty close.
Yeah. Wow.
And so it is. It's worth your time. It is free on VidAngel. If you download the Chosen app, it is free. The Chosen app.
I haven't gone to hunt it down or anything, but you know, it's not on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, so that's why I haven't watched it yet. Absolutely free. You just download the Chosen app. You can get it on anything, and it literally has a pay it forward program that they're trying to pay for the next season, but you don't have to pay anything to watch the episodes. So, anyway, I know that was like an off the cuff thing. Honestly, if you literally stop the podcast right now and go download that and watch it, I'll have considered this podcast. And then leave a comment.
Yeah, I'll leave a comment. Tell us you did it. Tell us I'm going to watch it right now. Yes, I'll consider that a success because of I really think it's worth your time. And I know people right now, because of the pandemic, because it's summertime, we have a little bit of time right now. I know there's a lack of content too because of movies.
Yeah.
All right.
Why'd you have to bring that up?
All right. But I know there's a lack of content too, and so people are looking kind of that second, third shelf now. They've taken the top shelf and they're like, now what's left? You know, and you're like, you're gonna really watch The Office again? You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I legitimately.
Sorry, did I just judge you right there?
I don't think I've stopped watching The Office since like 2012. Like.
Well, once you're done with an episode, pop over to the Chosen. Check it out. What do you got? I mean, off the cuff, what are you thinking? I know you didn't have a whole lot, but you were thinking through maybe one or two questions or maybe something silly.
I'll admit I forgot one completely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You got one though?
I think I've got one.
Bring it.
I totally decided to just skip over the silly stuff because I'm not feeling silly. So.
Dude, I'm silly enough. Go ahead. VeggieTales.
Ooh. So this kind of comes out of a conversation I was having with Jesse the other day.
Yeah.
He's preparing. He preached this last Sunday, and he was preparing for that, and
which is very good. Go check that out.
Yeah. You can go check out that video or find it on a podcast somewhere. But we reached this thing where he's preaching over John 9, right? And in John 9, Jesus heals a blind man, and but then you reach John 10, and there's it's in this section that we find like our Kingsway's core verse.
Yeah, John 10:10.
And he says, it's also here that he says, I am the good shepherd. Now, what catches my eye here is the fact that it's the same story. There's no, like, we have a chapter break right there and we get a whole new heading and stuff, but there's it's not a break. He's still standing there with the same people that he was talking to about the blind man that he just healed.
Yeah.
And he just continues into this. And so because of the chapter break and whatnot, I'm talking to Jesse about this. I'm like, man, like this makes me wonder, like, what is it about the blind man that makes him continue into talking about I'm the good shepherd and all this. And he asked me, so like where did the chapter and verse breaks come from then?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, these things came in centuries after the Bible's put together and stuff, right? And we just launched in this whole conversation of just the inspired nature of the Bible, right?
That's
so we talk
shallow,
about
easy to figure out.
Right?
Okay, keep
right?
going.
Yeah. So bring this off the cuff. So we kind of hold this viewpoint that these numbers that are thrown into the Bible are not inspired. Yeah. But everything else is. And I think he's wrestling with something right now that I wrestled with like 3 years ago. Yeah. Of like why? Yeah. Why is it inspired? I think for me it came from this place of like I feel like I had several people that I just saw kind of holding the Bible up on this pedestal of like where it was almost part of the Trinity, right? It was like God the Father, Jesus, the Bible, Holy Spirit. Like, and I was like, well, that's just
we know Jesus loved us because like, the Bible tells us not because Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. Okay. Yeah.
And so like
and that might that might be a new concept for some people. So you might need to chew on that for a second. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Back in like 2017, for me, I'm just an angry boy, and I
doubts.
Yeah, I went running and tried to figure out for myself, like, okay, we have this book full of things written by men, saying they're inspired by the Holy Spirit. What evidence? I don't know. Yeah, just talk about that. How do we get it still?
Yeah, I mean,
and for me, I think I've come far.
Yeah, and I know
I've
been on a journey. I've
been going to, been going to Ozark and stuff, and obviously full of people that I respect and that do believe that and stuff, and I think that's helped me. They've helped me a lot in kind of coming to a place where
for sure
I can come to a peace with it a little better.
Well, and I know Andy Stanley has been a part of my journey on this, and I know we've talked about this before, because I think, obviously I see the Bible as something that is inspired by God. I do see it as something that's worth studying, worth investigating. I do understand and see its power. I know you agree with that. The purity of what it is and what form and what language and what translation and where it came from and the scrolls and all that. That is still something that I would say I have much to learn. Yeah. But I have confidence in what we have, if that makes sense. But the thing that fills me with more confidence is something that I think Andy Stanley taught a couple years ago. And it's just a simple thought that I think has helped me a lot. He says, I don't believe in Jesus because the Bible tells me so. I believe in Jesus because John tells me so, and because Matthew told me so, and because Luke tells me so. And so he kind of takes the author of these books and he elevates them to say these are people. And so what he basically says is John and Matthew and Luke, they didn't step out to write these so that you would read a letter. They stepped out so that you would see them and hear them talk about this. And they were just using the tool of the written language to provide their witness. And what's funny is when they wrote this, the written language was there was uneducated people. Like when they're writing these aren't getting read. Like you and I wouldn't be able to go and read their letter in Greek. We didn't know how to speak Greek. I didn't know how to read Greek. Yeah. And so, they're depending on other people standing in front of them and then reading these letters and then those people hearing their words and knowing who they are. And so when I started to recognize that the intention of these was not for them to make a holy Bible. When they wrote these, they weren't going, oh, we're trying to make the Bible. You know, what made them make the Bible was people read this letter from John. They knew John. They knew who he had been with, and they trusted his testimony. And his testimony and his witness to who Christ was what made it Scripture. That was what provided. It was his reflection of all this, and his adherence to it was what gave it its power. When I started to feel that, then I could speak to people that don't believe in the Bible, and I could say, listen, I don't believe in the Bible. I believe in John. I believe in his witness. I don't believe in the words. I believe in his witness, his testimony. Yeah. And, you know, that I think was the missing piece for me. I think I saw, like you said, my struggle was the similar, where I was like, don't beat me over the head with a book. I don't believe in that book. I want people in my life. You know, I didn't go up to my wife and go, I read this book on marriage, and this book, these words in this book have described what we should do to get married. I went, hey, I've watched my parents have a brilliant marriage. I've watched people that I admire have a beautiful marriage. And I've seen people talk about and record. I'd like to do that too. Right? We don't just... So somehow I think we just got it backwards a little bit. Maybe it was just unintentionally, I think, talked about sometimes in those lanes. I'm still guilty of it. Sometimes, you know, I kind of hold up the Bible says, you know, when you say that, oh my gosh. And so I try really, really intentionally, and I'm not perfect at it, to mention where this is coming from. Now, where this gets tricky, and you know this, is when we don't know the author. Yeah. Right? Like Hebrews is a perfect example. We're like, I don't know who wrote Hebrews. Exactly, you know, it's like, it could be anyway. Yeah. But again, if we go off of that pulling thread of why we have the New Testament, it was off the first witnesses. And so why that book is stuck around is because it's so congruent with the voices of the other witnesses. It's such a telling. You can tell it's a Pharisee. In fact, I have a theory that it's probably someone that was in the Pharisee background that didn't necessarily want to attach his name to it because of fear it would have a negative effect. Yeah. You know what I mean? Now, it could have been Paul, but it doesn't seem very congruent with Paul's writings. It could be, you know, some say it could have been one of the other apostles that never attached his name to it. It could have been John the Elder. That's the other side of it that didn't write the Apostle John. But, you know, we don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is it's congruent with the language and the heart and the message. So when you read it, you see a person, not necessarily a writing. And so, you know, I always love it because a lot of people love Hebrews. Hebrews 11 and 12 is huge for a lot of people. But then they're like, who's the writer? And they're like, I don't know. But if I met him, I probably would know him because they've spent enough time with his heart and who he is and what he's about. So again, I don't know if that answers your question. I want to speak directly to what you mentioned, though, this chapter break right here, which is really neat, which I'm preaching about this week. What's so cool and why John orchestrates this whole thing, this is all a buildup to Lazarus being born or reborn again. So the concept of chapter 9 is this guy who's blind, hearing the voice of Jesus and obeying it. The Pharisees not being able to see, and so him going, you're blind, you need a shepherd to lead you out. Does that make sense? And then all the way to 11, where Lazarus is in the grave, and how does Jesus bring him out? But with his voice. Yeah. Right? And so the congruency of this is it's so well shaped that you can see John is shaping this to go, this guy responded, I put a mud on his eyes, but he actually did what I said before. He ever saw me, he obeyed me. Yeah. Then he called me a prophet. Then he said he's surely of God, and then he believed and followed me. Maybe that's all that the Pharisees had to do. Maybe they just had to go, maybe this guy is of God. Maybe he is the Son of God. Yeah. Maybe I should listen to his voice. Maybe he would call me out of death. And so it's really powerful. And actually, chapter 11 is where we see the downfall then, because the Pharisees don't listen to his voice. They don't respond. And it goes all the way to him having to pay the price. So it's a conversation with John that he's laying out that no matter if you're reading it or if you're listening to it or if you're trying to just hear his heart, you see it and it's intentionally written, which is really, 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 really cool. So
that's true.
I encourage anybody that's looking or listening or thinking about, you know, what are some of the resources? I know you read a couple books and you looked at a couple different things. I'm trying to remember that series by Andy Stanley. I think it's called. Is it called? No, it's not called Christian. It's called. It's like a.
The only thing I'm thinking of is Irresistible right now. Is that
Irresistible?
Where he talks about?
Irresistible's got it, but it's actually a series that you can look up. I'll try to give that to you afterwards. We can attach it to it.
Yeah.
But it's like a full, like, it's like a first steps almost class. Yeah. But it's powerful. It's powerful in its way of kind of laying out what we just talked about. It's a whole thing. Tough as Nails is one of the other series that he does. Yeah. It's very similar to that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a really, really good question. I'm glad you asked it. What were some of the resources? Do you remember any things that you?
Yeah. First thing I think of right now that I think would be super helpful is it's actually something that I just listened to pretty recently. Why can't I think of his name? Tim Mackey.
Tim Mackey.
Yeah.
Tim Mackey.
Encountering My Strange Bible. That podcast, I've been listening to that. It's one that I've kind of come back and forth on for a while, but he had a 3-part series just on like the making of the Bible and where it came from.
I listened to that. It's so good.
And it's super like scholarly and stuff. So if that's not your cup of tea, I totally understand. But it is super helpful in like understanding how it was put together and like why some books are included, some books aren't. I think he does like 2 episodes on the Old Testament and then one on the New. And but yeah,
and he speaks Hebrew and Greek.
Yeah.
And has a lot of that. His scholarly stuff, though, I can't read some things like N.T. Wright and like, F.F. Bruce and some of this stuff gets too much for me. And if you don't know what those names are, there's some scholarly guys. Yeah. But his stuff, for whatever reason, I don't know if I just need to take it in bits and pieces. It's digestible. It's digestible. So don't get turned off because it's just, it may be a little bit deeper than you're used to. His heart is amazing for you. He wants the common person to be able to listen to it.
As far as I read a book, I think it was the first book I read and kind of diving into all this. It's called The Bible Tells Me So by a man named Peter Enns. The like byline for this book is why defending scripture has made us unable to read it.
I read that book as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it has been a while since I read it. So it's
Peter Enns. I don't agree with everything Peter Enns. Juxtapositions. I don't believe everything that he comes up with or his concepts are always 100%. But man, his mind and where my doubts were coming from. Yeah, I remember it going, yeah, like that, And then also I felt like it was the lead in to kind of being ready. Because honestly, what you're talking about was you kind of had to break things down in order to rebuild them.
It was really important. I think it's something I encourage anyone to do is just to ask questions and to be willing to question things that you already believe. And like, I think
that's a scary thing to do. Yeah, but it's really healthy.
And to accept positions, not accepting and like just mindlessly believing, but accepting that these positions that you disagree with exist and that the people behind them aren't bad people.
I think there's a certain part of like what I grew up with is like there might be things out there that would cause me to unbelieve, and so I don't want to learn those. And like that was like a real big fear of mine for a long time. And what I found was that made my faith really weak when I wasn't willing to listen. And it's not being like reckless in that. Like I don't want to just go and dive into every most difficult question. But if I have a question and I keep ignoring it, that's actually giving it roots. And I need to be willing to step in and to go, this is really what my heart's at. It's broken for the pain and suffering that I see. It's frustrated with the lack of understanding of how we even got the Bible. It's like, where does this belief system come with? I don't see it at all. Like if you don't investigate those things, I really do think they lead to deeper places of doubt rather than just investigating them with a healthy attitude.
Agree. One other book I'd really recommend is called Finding God in the Waves. And it's by
I've not read that.
Mike, I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. McHargue.
Okay.
He normally goes by the moniker Science Mike. Okay. He does podcasts and stuff, but it's just his story. He grew up, I think it was Southern Baptist, and kind of hit this place where he's not like, as far as I remember, not like an educated scientist, but he has a passion for it and likes to dig into all these things, and came to a point where the science he's learning was contradicting,
fracturing,
and completely abandoned. Like went for years pretending just because he knew it would do to his family, and but eventually couldn't do it anymore, abandoned it all. But it's his journey back to it. He came to this point where he had to ask the question, okay, how do I balance this science that I'm learning, the scientific logical side with the supernatural spiritual side that I've experienced.
Yeah.
Like
I can't measure it. I can't experiment to get it, but yet I know it's real. I've seen it, wind, right? Like I know it's there. I don't know. Yeah.
And so it's not like it's a story. It's a story is what it is, and it
sounds powerful.
I love it. I've read it 2 or 3 times.
And maybe you can speak a little bit to this, but I kind of have some strong opinions on if you have some people in your life that are doubting and are kind of deconstructing pieces of their faith and kind of watching things that they believed for a long time kind of melt around them and figuring out where the solid ground is underneath the sand that seems to fall away. If you're watching people around you do that you love, it can be really challenging. One of the things that I found that gave me the most confidence was that I had people in my life, and maybe you had people like this too, that were looking at you and going, it's okay. You're going to be okay. There's a floor on this. Yeah. You're going to find God, or you know what? This is where your faith begins. And that's more the answer that I got. I'm like, yeah, you're taking away the framework that your parents or your pastor or your youth pastor or the people around you that had created, and you're actually starting to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And you found it's a little ricketier or you didn't really like, where they had put you. Did you have people like that in your life that were doing that?
I did, yeah. I think the main one was Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin Bryant.
Who's that guy?
Just some dude I found. No. He was the worship pastor, and I don't even know what specifically his title was. Co-pastor,
executive co-pastor. He was a lot. He did a lot.
He did a lot
of
stuff.
Long time.
Yeah. But for years he mentored me and just spent time listening to me.
Yeah.
and he took the brunt of a lot of my just ramblings and all this, and
even got you to go to Ozark out of it.
Yeah,
that's crazy, right? You're like, oh goodness,
that was
I love. I mean, I love Ozark, but I mean, coming from what you just said, like some of Ozark's stuff would have been a really tough hurdle to get into.
Yeah,
and so I know that Kevin was a part of that. I kind of set you up for that question. I knew that was a part of your journey, but I think it's really important for people to recognize that it took years of mentoring sometimes to get through those doubts. I know for myself, I want the whipped cream, easy answer. I want the 10 minutes here, 2 minutes there, and I got it. If you really want to get past some of this doubts, one of these questions, it's going to take honest, humble approaches. When I speak with confidence about some of the things that I've learned, I love that I have confidence in it now. But I remember a day, years, not that long ago, truthfully, just a few years ago, where people would ask that question, and I'd be like, yeah. Oh, you expect me to have an answer? Like, oh gosh, I don't know. And and I'm preaching every week.
Yeah.
And I'm, and I remember at one point looking at my Bible and being like, how do I preach from this if I'm not sure about it? And there's just times in that. But I think the beauty of all that, and the beauty of where I think we can end this discussion, is when you watch something like The Chosen, I'm not even kidding you, the Bible comes to life and you see that it's people. And when you have Matthew's calling, and they just put this little thing in there where Peter's angry that Matthew got called. And he's like, why'd you bring those stupid tablets anyways? And he's like, I don't know. I just had them in my hands. And he's like, should I put them back? And Jesus is like, you might find a use for them. And that's where it ends the episode. And it's just this cute little snippet of a conversation where I'm like, that's probably what it is. Where Matthew's just going, this is too good not to write down. This is too powerful for me to not talk about it. Others have to know. And I know as I've been through my journey, I can feel the heart of the people in here that I would cry out to my generations beyond me, that I want my grandkids and my great-grandkids to know the confidence that I have in Christ and what I've seen him do unseen. That's all my experiments, all my, that I've seen. And I think wherever you're at on your faith journey, finding those convictions and being willing to invest to get that conviction, to invest, to find that relationship, to find that confidence is worth it. It's so worth it, but it takes time, and it doesn't happen alone most of the time. You have to bring somebody along with you on the journey. So be willing to invest in those around you that are maybe having some doubts, be willing to know that maybe that's your place to step in and help them navigate. Don't be fearful of their doubts. Help them find their own faith. Step in and give them the confidence to ask the questions in a safe place. If you have questions, put them in the comments. We'd love to help you navigate some of that, maybe give you some resources to figure some of that stuff out. If you agree with Jed and you're on that journey, just let him know, Jed, I'm right where you were a couple years ago. I'm trying to figure this out. We'd love to know that you're on that journey too. We'll put the stuff that we talked about as best we can in the description. This has been a fun off the cuff. Maybe you're checking out a book that was referenced. Maybe you're diving into some of the things that we'll put in the comments. Maybe you're just checking out The Chosen. I don't know. But I'm really glad you tuned in today, and I'm glad that, Jed, you were able to join us. And as always, it's been a pleasure. And until next week, we'll see you. Have a great and glorious day in the Lord.